Hey everyone! If you enjoy these story videos, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world and keeps us creating more amazing stories every week. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The rain came early that evening, thin needles of silver tapping against the windows of the small Miller house on Cedar Street. Outside, the Oregon sky was a restless gray, the kind that smelled of wet pine and electricity. Inside, Ethan Miller sat hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table, his face lit by the pale blue glow of the screen. He was debugging a stubborn piece of code for the third hour straight, a mug of cold coffee beside him. From the living room came a faint groan. "Ethan," Rachel called, her voice soft but weary. "Can you help me up?" He barely looked up. "One SEC, babe. Just need to finish this line." There was silence. Then the sound of her struggling to rise, a faint shuffle, a sigh, a small thud as the remote slipped from her hand to the floor. Ethan winced, but didn't move. It wasn't that he didn't care. He did. He loved Rachel, the woman with the gentle smile who had said yes to him in the rose garden of Portland's Pittock Mansion 3 years ago. But lately, everything felt exhausting. Pregnancy, he had realized, wasn't as cute as the Instagram stories made it look. Rachel was 7 months along now, and every week brought new demands: doctor appointments, special meals, midnight cravings, back rubs, and endless conversations about nursery colors. Ethan tried, or at least, he thought he did, but sometimes he missed the simplicity of before. When he finally hit save and turned around, Rachel was already sitting upright, her swollen belly wrapped in a soft gray blanket. She was watching a baby product commercial with misty eyes. Ethan smiled faintly. "You okay?" She turned to him, a mix of tiredness and frustration in her gaze. "You said you'd be home early tonight." "I am home," he said, shrugging. "Just had to finish some work." "You've been working since dinner," she murmured. "You don't even look at me anymore, Ethan." That hit harder than he expected. "That's not fair. I'm doing this for us, for the baby." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know. I wish you'd talk to me, not just about the bills or the crib or—" "Rachel," he interrupted, running a hand through his hair, "you're tired, okay? You're emotional. Let's not do this tonight." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Rachel's lips trembled. "Emotional," she repeated quietly, her voice breaking. "You think everything is just hormones, don't you?" Ethan sighed, standing up. "I didn't mean." "Forget it," she said, turning away. The room fell into silence, except for the rhythmic ticking of the clock and the rain drumming harder against the windows. Ethan stared at her back, the curve of her shoulders, the rise and fall of her breathing, and something inside him twisted. He wanted to say sorry, but pride and exhaustion tangled his tongue. He grabbed his jacket instead. "I'm going for a drive." Rachel didn't reply. As he stepped outside, the storm had grown wilder. Wind whipped against the trees, and thunder rolled across the hills like a warning. He slid into his old Ford pickup, the one that smelled faintly of pine-scented air freshener and coffee spills, and drove aimlessly through the sleeping town. His mind buzzed with anger and guilt. He loved Rachel, of course he did, but sometimes he missed the version of her who laughed at his dumb jokes, who danced barefoot in the kitchen to old Fleetwood Mac songs. Now, every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. Maybe it's just the pregnancy, he thought bitterly. She'll be back to normal once the baby's here. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a crack of thunder that shook the ground. Ethan pulled over near the old Miller barn at the edge of town, the same place he and Rachel had picnicked on their first date. The rain hammered the windshield, blurring everything into streaks of silver. He let out a frustrated laugh. "I wish she knew what it's like," he muttered. "To deal with someone who complains all day and cries over cereal commercials." Then, almost childishly, he added, "I wish she could be me for a day, and I could be her, so she'd see how hard it is." A flash of lightning illuminated the truck for a split second, followed by a deafening crack that made Ethan flinch. The power lines above sparked violently. He cursed and started the engine, deciding it was time to go home. By the time he returned, the storm had reached its peak. The house trembled under the roar of thunder. Rachel was asleep on the couch, one hand on her belly, her face peaceful despite the flickering lights. Ethan sighed, guilt washing over him again. He hung his wet jacket, turned off the TV, and sat down on the armchair across from her. The rain outside became a lullaby. He whispered softly, "I'm sorry, Rach. I just don't know how to do this sometimes." Another flash of lightning, brighter than before, filled the room. The lights flickered, then went out completely. A single thunderclap echoed, and for a brief moment, the air around him seemed to hum. A faint blue glow traced across the ceiling like veins of light. Ethan blinked, disoriented. Then silence. The storm outside softened into drizzle. Ethan leaned back, half asleep, the sound of rain blurring into dreams. The morning light came slow and golden through the blinds. Birds chirped outside. The world seemed calm again. Ethan yawned, stretching lazily. His body felt strange. Heavy. Achy. He groaned and sat up, but something was wrong. The blanket that covered him wasn't his usual plaid one. It was a floral throw, soft and faintly perfumed. The couch beneath him wasn't the armchair, it was the living room sofa where Rachel usually slept during her restless nights. He blinked and looked down. His vision blurred, then sharpened, and what he saw made his stomach drop. A round, unmistakably pregnant belly rose beneath his t-shirt. Rachel's hands were resting on it. Slender fingers, the nails painted pale pink. What the? He scrambled to his feet, but even that was a challenge. His balance was off. His center of gravity felt wrong. His back ached, and a faint flutter, a kick, pressed against his ribs from the inside. Oh God. He stumbled toward the mirror in the hallway and froze. Rachel's reflection stared back. Wide brown eyes. Loose chestnut hair. Her face pale with shock, his shock. Holy, this can't be happening. Just then, a shout came from the bedroom. Ethan? He turned, and there, standing in the doorway, was himself. Or rather, Rachel in his body, wearing his oversized t-shirt, her expression somewhere between horror and disbelief. They stared at each other for a long, silent 5 seconds. Then both screamed. Okay, Ethan gasped, or Rachel's voice gasped, pacing the kitchen. Okay, let's think logically. Logically? Rachel shot back, her voice coming from his body. Ethan, I'm looking at my own pregnant belly and hearing my husband's voice come out of it. There's nothing logical about this. Ethan rubbed his temples, or rather, the spot where Rachel usually rubbed when she was stressed. Maybe we're dreaming. She pinched herself. Hard. Nope. Not dreaming. Then maybe, he hesitated. The lightning? The storm. Rachel stared at him, or herself, incredulously. You think lightning swapped our bodies? He shrugged helplessly. You got a better theory? For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Rachel, still in Ethan's body, burst out laughing. It was deep and rough, the sound completely at odds with her usual gentle tone. This is insane, she said between giggles. I sound like a middle-aged man. Ethan glared. Hey, I'm 32. Rachel smirked. Exactly. Despite the panic, Ethan felt a flicker of something he hadn't seen in weeks: laughter. Real laughter. It was absurd, terrifying, and utterly ridiculous, but for the first time in a long while, they were laughing together. But as the laughter faded, reality returned. Rachel's face, or Ethan's, sobered. What are we going to do? She whispered. Ethan looked down at the curve of her belly, his now. The baby kicked again, gently. I don't know, he admitted quietly. But I guess we'll have to live each other's lives for a while. Outside, the last drops of rain slid down the window pane, glistening like liquid silver. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled low and knowing. And in that small suburban house on Cedar Street, two souls began the strangest, most life-changing day of their lives. Sunlight poured through the blinds, soft and golden, the kind that usually made Sunday mornings in Cedar Hill feel peaceful. But for Ethan Miller, currently trapped in his pregnant wife's body, peace was the last thing he felt. The moment he tried to roll out of bed, a sharp pain shot through his lower back. Then came a strange, rhythmic thumping from inside his belly. "Oh my God," he gasped, clutching his stomach. "It's alive. It's actually kicking." From the bathroom came the sound of a toothbrush clattering into the sink. Rachel, in Ethan's body, appeared at the door, looking wide-eyed and disheveled. "You think that's weird," she said, pointing at herself. "Try shaving your face for the first time while your brain still screams, 'I'm a woman.'" Ethan blinked at her, speechless. Rachel's his 5 o'clock shadow was uneven, a patchy battlefield of shaving cream and missed spots. He tried not to laugh. "You missed your chin." "Oh, shut up." Despite the insanity of their situation, the couple found themselves trapped in a rhythm of chaos that felt oddly familiar. Rachel, ever the planner, had already started a to-do list on Ethan's phone. "Okay," she said, scrolling. "You, meaning me, have a prenatal checkup at 10:30 with Dr. Parsons. Don't be late. And I have your job meeting with the regional manager at 9. Ethan frowned. "Wait, me at the OB/GYN? "Yes. You'll be fine. Just don't say anything stupid." "Rachel, I don't even know what an OB/GYN does." "Well, I mean, I know, but not from this angle." Rachel smirked. "Congratulations, you're about to find out." By 9:45, Ethan was dressed, or rather, squeezed into Rachel's maternity jeans and a floral blouse that barely stretched over the bump. The act of putting on shoes alone felt like an Olympic event. He had to sit down 3 times just to catch his breath. "How does she do this every day?" he muttered, struggling to bend over and tie a lace. "It's like having a watermelon glued to your stomach." On the way out, he grabbed her purse and found it weighed almost as much as the baby. Inside were 17 different items: snacks, lotion, receipts, tissues, a tiny notebook of baby names, and, bizarrely, a pack of peppermint candies labeled for nausea emergencies. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Women are survival experts. The clinic waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and baby powder. Soft piano music played in the background, the kind that was supposed to calm nervous parents. Ethan sat awkwardly among a sea of pregnant women, clutching Rachel's purse like a security blanket. He was trying to scroll through his phone when the nurse at the front desk called out cheerfully, "Rachel Miller?" Ethan looked up, startled. Yeah, that's me." The nurse smiled. "We'll get your vitals first, honey. Follow me." He followed, feeling like an imposter in a maternity cult. As he stepped onto the scale, the nurse glanced at the monitor and said, "Weight looks good. How's baby doing?" "Lots of movement." Ethan hesitated. Yeah, he's kicking like he's training for the NFL." The nurse laughed. "That's what we like to hear." "Any swelling, dizziness, nausea?" He wanted to answer, just emotionally, but instead managed, "A little tired, maybe." Then came the blood pressure cuff, the thermometer, the endless small talk about baby names and due dates. By the time Dr. Parsons entered, kind eyes behind her glasses, clipboard in hand, Ethan was already sweating. "So, Rachel," Dr. Parsons said kindly, sitting across from him. "How are we feeling today?" Round," he replied. She chuckled, clearly used to awkward husbands and nervous moms. That's a normal symptom at this stage. When she placed the Doppler device on his belly, Ethan froze. A soft, rhythmic thump-thump, thump-thump filled the room. The sound was faint but steady, like a small heartbeat echoing underwater. For the first time that morning, Ethan went silent. His breath caught. That sound wasn't just a baby. It was his child. Dr. Parsons smiled warmly. "Strong heartbeat. You're doing great, Rachel." Ethan's throat tightened. "He's really in there," he whispered. When he left the clinic, the Oregon sunlight felt warmer, softer somehow. For the first time, he understood, just a fraction, of what Rachel had been carrying. Not just the physical weight, but the emotional one. Meanwhile, across town, Rachel was discovering the horrors of corporate life in Ethan's body. Sitting at his cluttered desk, surrounded by humming computers and half-empty coffee cups, she stared blankly at lines of code on the monitor. "What is this language?" she muttered. Her coworker, Mike, a bearded man in a faded hoodie, leaned over the cubicle. "Morning, dude. Late night?" Rachel forced a laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." Your wife's doing okay? The baby coming soon? She smiled despite herself. She's tougher than I thought. Mike grinned. That's what they all say before diaper duty starts. An hour later, Rachel realized Ethan's easy desk job wasn't easy at all. Her inbox overflowed with bug reports, deadlines, and passive-aggressive emails from his manager. Between the constant pressure and the lack of breaks, she finally understood why Ethan sometimes came home drained and silent. By lunchtime, her stomach growled so loudly that Mike tossed her a granola bar. You okay, man? You look pale. Rachel chuckled weakly. Just a lot going on. Back at home, Ethan had barely made it through the front door before collapsing on the couch. His back ached, his ankles throbbed, and he was convinced his bladder had shrunk to the size of a walnut. He had gone to the bathroom 5 times since breakfast. He groaned and rubbed his belly. How did she survive this? Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a video call from Rachel. He picked up, and there she was, sitting at his desk, tie loosened, hair messy, looking like she'd aged 10 years. Hey, she said tiredly. How was your doctor thing? Ethan smiled faintly. I heard the baby's heartbeat. Rachel's expression softened. Really? Yeah, it was. I don't know. Kind of amazing. For a moment, the screen was silent. 2 people, swapped and lost in the strangest situation of their lives, just looked at each other. Rachel broke the silence first. Well, I fixed one of your bugs today. He blinked. You what? Don't worry, I Googled it. She grinned. I might be a natural. Ethan laughed. Maybe you should keep my job. Maybe you should handle the next contraction kick, she retorted. They both chuckled, the tension between them softening into something warm. That night, Ethan tried to sleep in their bed, but it was impossible. Every time he turned, the baby kicked. His back throbbed, his feet felt swollen, and the bathroom called every hour. At 2 a.m., he gave up and shuffled to the kitchen, grumbling under his breath. To his surprise, Rachel, still in his body, was already there, sitting at the counter with a bowl of cereal. They looked at each other and burst out laughing. What are you doing up? Ethan asked. Can't sleep, she said, gesturing at herself. Your body runs on caffeine and anxiety. Tell me about it, he muttered, lowering himself into a chair with a groan. They sat in companionable silence, eating cereal straight from the box. Outside, the world was quiet, just the distant hum of rain and the soft creak of their old house. Rachel looked at him thoughtfully. You know, she said, I used to think your job was easy. Just sitting in front of a computer all day. And I used to think you got to relax at home, Ethan replied. Turns out, carrying a baby feels like having a bowling ball strapped to your stomach while a tiny ninja practices kickboxing inside. They both laughed again, but there was something different this time, something tender, almost reverent. For the first time, they were truly seeing each other. Later, as Rachel drifted to sleep on the couch, Ethan stayed awake a little longer. He looked down at the curve of her belly, resting his hands gently on it. Hey, little one, he whispered. Your mom's pretty incredible, you know? I didn't get it before. But I do now. The baby kicked, just once, as if answering him. And as the clock ticked softly in the darkness, Ethan Miller, husband, future father, and now very temporary mother, realized that sometimes the only way to understand love is to live inside it. Monday mornings had always felt long for Ethan Miller, but for Rachel, now living in Ethan's skin, it felt like stepping into a foreign battlefield. The IT office of Gresham Tech Solutions buzzed with fluorescent light and the constant click of keyboards. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and printer toner. Rachel straightened Ethan's shirt collar for the 5th time and muttered under her breath, "How does he breathe in this tie?" She was late. The traffic, the tie, the briefcase full of cables she didn't understand, it all felt like a nightmare. But nothing compared to the meeting waiting at 9 o'clock sharp with Mr. Daniels, Ethan's regional manager, a man with a voice like a fax machine and a personality to match. When she arrived at the glass-walled conference room, Daniels was already talking. He paused mid-sentence, eyes narrowing. Nice of you to join us, Ethan. Rachel forced a smile. Traffic, she said. You know how it is. He raised an eyebrow. It's Oregon. Nobody blames the trees for being in your way. The room chuckled politely. Rachel didn't. She took a seat, trying to imitate the way Ethan usually leaned back, relaxed, unbothered, but instead it looked like she was preparing to faint. Charts, numbers, and performance slides blurred before her eyes. Daniels was discussing deadlines, client bugs, budget overruns. Rachel scribbled random notes just to look busy, though half of them read "smile more" and "don't vomit from nerves." Then Daniels turned to her. "So, Ethan, about the new update, your report says it'll be ready by Wednesday?" Rachel froze. Right? Wednesday." He folded his arms. "Because I'm getting emails from the client saying you haven't merged the security patch." Rachel blinked. "The what now?" Daniels frowned. "The patch, Miller. The one you promised last week." Panic flared. She had no idea what that meant. She could handle 30 second graders, organize parent meetings, even calm down a crying child, but this was a different planet. Before she could answer, Mike, Ethan's coworker, jumped in. "We're still running final checks, sir. We'll have it by tomorrow." Rachel shot him a grateful look. Mike gave a subtle nod, mouthing, "You owe me, dude." Daniels just grunted. "Fine. Tomorrow morning, no excuses." He clicked to the next slide, and Rachel felt her pulse slow down barely. By the end of the meeting, she was exhausted. When the team dispersed, Mike leaned on her desk. "You okay, man? You looked like you saw a ghost in there." Rachel sighed. "Something like that. Thanks for saving me." "No problem," he said, grinning. "Hey, I get it. Wife's pregnant. You're probably not sleeping much, right?" Rachel chuckled. "You have no idea." At lunch, she sat in Ethan's favorite diner, a small place near the office that smelled of grease and old coffee. She ordered what he usually did, a double cheeseburger and fries. But as she bit into it, guilt crept in. Is this what he eats every day? No wonder he looks so tired by evening. As she looked around the diner, she noticed the people there, blue-collar workers, office employees, truck drivers. Men who all looked worn down but determined. And for the first time, Rachel realized how invisible that kind of exhaustion could be. The quiet, daily weight of providing. She pulled out Ethan's wallet and found a stack of unpaid bills, a folded ultrasound photo, and a note in his handwriting. "Hospital payment plan. Don't tell Rachel, she'll worry." Her throat tightened. He was keeping that from me? Not because he didn't trust her, but because he didn't want to burden her. Suddenly, the late nights and tired eyes made sense. Meanwhile, back at home, Ethan was losing a very different kind of battle. He had decided to cook breakfast. "How hard can pancakes be?" he muttered, scrolling through Rachel's recipe app. The answer, apparently, was very hard. Half an hour later, the kitchen looked like a war zone, flour on the counter, smoke from the pan, and something that looked vaguely like a pancake stuck to the ceiling. The baby kicked hard, as if disapproving. "Hey, I'm trying here," Ethan said to the belly, waving a spatula. He ended up eating cereal instead, sitting at the kitchen table and glancing at Rachel's planner. Each page was full of neat handwriting, doctor appointments, grocery lists, reminders like pick up prenatal vitamins and call mom about crib. Ethan sighed. He had never realized how much mental work Rachel did behind the scenes, keeping everything organized, remembering every small detail he always forgot. She made it look effortless. Now, even brushing his hair felt like a chore. The doorbell rang. It was Emma, his mother. "Rachel, honey," she said warmly, stepping inside with a casserole. "You look radiant." Ethan froze. "Mom?" Emma blinked. "You okay, dear? You sound deeper than usual." Yeah, morning voice." She smiled, patting his arm. "Men never understand what we go through when we're pregnant. I remember when I was carrying Ethan's stubborn boy, that one. Kicked like a mule." Ethan awkwardly chuckled. "Yeah, sounds about right." As she chatted away, Emma's words hit differently now. The things she said about motherhood, sacrifice, and patience weren't just stories, they were reality. For the first time, Ethan saw his mother not just as mom, but as a woman who had lived through what Rachel was living now. When Emma left, Ethan sank into the couch, rubbing his belly gently. "Okay," he whispered. "Maybe I've been an idiot." The baby gave a soft kick, almost as if agreeing. At the office, the days stretched endlessly. Rachel fought to keep up with technical jargon, coding errors, and deadlines she didn't understand. Each ping of a new email felt like a personal attack. By 5 p.m., she was drained. Her hands ached, her neck stiffened, and her head spun from staring at the monitor too long. She finally shut off the computer, grabbed Ethan's jacket, and stepped outside. The cool evening air hit her face like a wave of relief. She took a deep breath, watching the sunset burn orange over the rooftops. For the first time, she understood why Ethan came home so quiet some nights, not because he didn't care, but because he was simply spent. That evening, they met again at home, both collapsing onto the couch like two survivors of different wars. Rachel, still in Ethan's body, looked at him. "You cooked." Ethan, surrounded by dirty dishes, nodded proudly. "Kind of." She laughed, inspecting the kitchen. "It looks like you declared war on flour." "Don't judge me," he said, smirking. "Your spatulas are evil." For a few minutes, they just sat there, watching TV and sharing the same exhausted silence they used to resent. But now it felt different. Softer. Finally, Rachel spoke. "I saw the bills today." Ethan stiffened. "You went through my wallet?" "I didn't mean to," she said gently. I didn't realize how much you were handling. The hospital stuff, the insurance, the overtime." He looked away. "I didn't want you to worry." She nodded slowly. "I get that now." Ethan glanced at her, his eyes filled with something raw and honest. "And I didn't realize how much you do either. The appointments, the planning, the everything. I couldn't even make pancakes without setting off the smoke alarm." Rachel smiled. "So, we're both terrible at each other's jobs." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, but we're learning." She reached over, her big, calloused hand awkwardly resting on his smaller, pregnant one. "Maybe that's the point," she said quietly. "To learn." Outside, rain began again, soft, steady, comforting. Ethan looked at her, his expression tender. "When we switch back," he murmured, "I swear, I'll never take you for granted again." Rachel smiled. "You better not. Or I'll make lightning strike twice." They laughed, leaning back together, tired but somehow at peace. And in the flickering glow of the TV, two souls who had been strangers in their own marriage began to find each other again. The morning after the disastrous prenatal class, Ethan woke up groaning. His back hurt, his legs cramped, and his stomach, no, Rachel's stomach, felt like someone was performing a tap dance inside it. He tried to roll over, but a stabbing pain from his lower spine froze him halfway. "Jesus, how does she even sleep like this?" he muttered. He swung his legs off the bed, realizing he had slept sitting up again, propped by a fortress of pillows. Getting up felt like trying to lift a bowling ball tied to his waist. He managed to waddle to the bathroom, clutching his belly as if afraid it would fall off. Halfway there, he heard his mother, Emma, calling from the kitchen. "Morning, sweetie. How's my glowing mama-to-be today?" Ethan nearly snapped. "Glowing? I feel like a truck ran me over, backed up and ran me over again." Emma poked her head around the corner, unfazed. "That's pregnancy for you, darling. Builds character." Ethan muttered something under his breath, but Emma's knowing smile made him pause. She'd been acting oddly serene ever since the storm, almost like she knew what was going on. "Mom, you ever feel like something supernatural's at work?" Ethan asked cautiously. Emma shrugged, pouring coffee into her mug. "Life has its lessons, Ethan. Sometimes the universe gives us unconventional teachers." Ethan blinked. "That's not an answer." She winked. "It's not supposed to be." Meanwhile, across town, Rachel, in Ethan's body, sat in Ethan's car, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she faced morning traffic on her way to his office. She'd never realized how insane his commute was, bumper to bumper, endless honking, and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "You can do this. Just pretend to be Ethan." But when she arrived at his IT office, she was met with a sea of blinking monitors, cables, and coworkers who all spoke fluent tech essay. "Morning, Miller," said a guy with messy hair and a donut in his hand. "You got the firewall patch done?" Rachel blinked. Yeah, firewall. Totally. I patched it right up." The guy squinted at her. "You okay, man? You look different." Rachel laughed nervously. Pressure. Lots of pressure lately." She escaped to Ethan's cubicle and turned on his computer, staring helplessly at lines of code. "Oh my God," she muttered. "Is this what he does all day?" She quickly realized it wasn't the mindless sitting around she had imagined. It was nonstop problem-solving, tight deadlines, and constant Slack messages from a boss who seemed allergic to kindness. At noon, her boss, Mr. Conrad, dropped by. "Miller, you're late with the server report. I needed it yesterday." Rachel straightened, channeling her inner teacher. "Sir, with all due respect, maybe if the requests came with clearer instructions." "Excuses," he cut her off, waving his hand. "Fix it." Rachel gritted her teeth. So this is what he deals with every day. That evening, both of them dragged themselves home, each looking equally destroyed. Ethan, still in Rachel's body, had spent the afternoon struggling through swollen ankles, endless snacks he couldn't digest, and hormonal mood swings that came out of nowhere. At one point, he found himself crying at a diaper commercial. When Rachel, in Ethan's body, opened the door, Ethan was sitting on the couch, half buried in a blanket, eating pickles straight from the jar. "Rough day?" she asked dryly. He sniffled. I saw a Pampers ad." The baby smiled. Rachel sighed, dropping her laptop bag. "I had to deal with your boss. He's awful." "You never told me he yells like that." Ethan blinked. "You think I enjoy getting yelled at?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, unexpectedly, they both laughed. It wasn't bitter. It was the first genuine laugh they'd shared in weeks. Rachel flopped down beside him. "I think we both owe each other an apology." Ethan nodded. "I used to think you were exaggerating about being tired all the time. I get it now. My feet are sausages." "And I thought your job was easy," Rachel admitted. "But it's actually kind of soul-crushing." "Welcome to adulthood," he said. "Guess we've both been jerks," she replied. He smiled softly. "Maybe. But at least we're learning." The next few days became a crash course in empathy. Ethan learned to waddle without waddling too much. He developed a new respect for maternity clothes and even mastered the art of sleeping with a pillow fortress. At the clinic, he tried his best to stay composed when the nurse placed the fetal monitor on his belly until the baby's heartbeat filled the room, fast and strong like a tiny drum. It stopped him cold. That sound, the sound of their baby, sent something deep through him. He realized Rachel had been feeling that every day, carrying it alone while he complained about trivial things. Tears stung his eyes before he could stop them. The nurse smiled kindly. "First time hearing it?" Ethan nodded, voice trembling. "Yeah, and wow." Meanwhile, Rachel, in Ethan's body, started to see him differently too. She noticed the quiet things he did, the way he always paid the bills on time, stayed up late fixing her school laptop, or went grocery shopping even when he was tired. Things she had taken for granted. She even had lunch with his coworker, Ben, who said, "You know, Miller, you always talk about your wife like she's the sun in your life. It's nice to see that kind of love still exists." Rachel froze. "He talks about me like that?" She drove home that evening with a lump in her throat. One night, after both had reached their emotional limit, they sat together in the dim living room. Ethan rubbed his belly absent-mindedly while Rachel massaged her temples. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Rachel said softly, "Do you think this, whatever this is trying to teach us something?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Feels like it. Maybe Mom was right about the universe having weird lessons." Rachel smiled faintly. "You think she knows?" "Oh, she definitely knows," Ethan said. "She's been giving me that smug look all week." They both laughed quietly. Then, Ethan placed his hand over his belly. "You know what's crazy? I think the baby knows too. Every time I start whining, it kicks. Like it's telling me to shut up." Rachel's eyes softened. "That's our kid, all right." For the first time since the storm, There was peace between them, a fragile, beautiful silence filled with understanding. But peace never lasts long. The next morning, Emma burst into the room with a grin. "Guess what, lovebirds? Baby showers today." Ethan groaned. "Wait, what?" "Oh, didn't I tell you?" Emma chirped. "Rachel's friends planned it. Everyone's coming. Family, coworkers, church ladies." Ethan's face went pale. "Oh no. I can't go out there pretending to be Rachel in front of 50 people." Rachel smirked. "Well, you're about to learn how social anxiety meets pregnancy hormones feels." Ethan buried his face in his hands. "I'd rather get struck by lightning again." Emma chuckled, patting his shoulder. "Careful what you wish for, dear. The universe has a sense of humor." Saturday morning arrived like a freight train. Ethan had barely slept. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, dreading the words baby shower. Just the idea of sitting in a room full of women talking about baby bottles, diapers, and epidurals made him want to crawl under the bed. Rachel, in his body, looked far too cheerful as she adjusted his shirt collar. "You'll be fine," she said. "Just smile, say thank you, and don't make any weird jokes." "I'm me right now," he grumbled. "What if someone hugs me? Or worse, what if someone asks me about the birth plan?" Rachel smirked. "Then you'll find out how often people think it's okay to ask personal questions about your body." "That's cruel," Ethan muttered. "That's karma," she said sweetly, patting his shoulder. By noon, the Miller house had been transformed into a pastel explosion. Pink and white balloons floated from the ceiling, streamers curled down the walls, and a banner reading "Welcome, Baby Miller" hung across the living room. The smell of cupcakes, frosting, and vanilla candles filled the air. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, wearing one of Rachel's floral maternity dresses, because apparently it was tradition for the mom-to-be to wear something bright. He tugged at the hem nervously. "Do I look ridiculous?" Emma, holding a tray of sandwiches, smiled warmly. "You look radiant, sweetheart." "Radiant like a traffic cone," he muttered. Guests began to pour in, neighbors, coworkers, old friends from Rachel's teaching days. They squealed, hugged, and rubbed his belly like it was a good luck charm. Ethan froze the first time someone did it. "Oh my gosh, you're glowing," squealed Mindy, one of Rachel's closest friends. "How's my favorite mama feeling?" Ethan's mouth opened and closed. Gassy." Mindy blinked. What?" He forced a laugh. "I mean, blessed. Feeling blessed." Rachel, watching from the corner in Ethan's body, face-palmed. Soon, the living room filled with chatter and laughter. Plates clinked, someone played soft music, and the smell of vanilla cupcakes made Ethan's stomach twist in both hunger and nausea. Mindy clapped her hands. "All right, everyone. Time for the games." Games. Rachel's eyes widened in warning, but it was too late. The first game was Guess the Baby Food. Blindfolded, Ethan had to taste various pureed foods and identify the flavor. "Open wide, Mama," someone said cheerfully, handing him a spoonful of orange mush. He took a hesitant bite. "Ugh, what is that?" "Motor oil." "Carrots," everyone shouted, laughing. Ethan gagged dramatically. "Those are not carrots. Those are sadness." Then came the diaper race, 2 teams competing to put diapers on baby dolls the fastest. Ethan, sweating, fumbled with the tiny tabs while his team shouted directions. "Careful, Rachel," yelled Emma from across the room. "You'll poke the baby." "I'm trying," he cried. "These things are like origami for infants." Rachel, despite herself, laughed so hard she had to step outside to catch her breath. Outside on the porch, Rachel leaned against the railing, shaking her head. It was absurd, but somehow, watching Ethan stumble through all this gave her a warm ache in her chest. He was trying. He could have faked illness or refused to come, but he didn't. He was pushing through, awkward and clumsy, but sincere. Emma joined her, wiping her hands on her apron. "He's doing better than I thought," she said softly. Rachel nodded. "Yeah, he really is." Emma looked at her knowingly. "You know, sometimes people need to see life through another's eyes before they can really love right." Rachel smiled faintly. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Emma sipped her lemonade. A little divine intervention never hurt a marriage. Rachel froze. "Wait, so you..." Emma just winked. Drink your lemonade, dear. Back inside, Ethan was sitting among a mountain of pink-wrapped gifts, panting slightly from laughing too hard. Mindy was reading aloud from a card. To Rachel and Ethan, may your little girl grow up surrounded by love and laughter. Ethan blinked. Wait. Girl? We're having a girl. Everyone gasped. Mindy's eyes widened. Oh no, was it supposed to be a surprise? Ethan's face went red. No, I mean, of course. A girl. Totally knew that. Haha. Rachel dropped her face into her hands from across the room. Emma quickly jumped in, clapping her hands. All right, everyone. How about cake before the emotional damage gets worse? Laughter broke out and the tension eased. As the afternoon stretched on, the chaos mellowed into something warm and tender. Ethan sat quietly, hands resting on the round belly, listening to the laughter of friends and the gentle hum of conversation. He'd never paid much attention to these things before, the way people came together for small joys, the unspoken love in shared food and laughter. Now he felt it deeply. When Mindy leaned over and said, "You're going to be such a wonderful mom, Rachel," Ethan actually teared up. He nodded, voice soft. I just want to be good to her. To both of them. Mindy smiled, not realizing the layers in his words. You already are. After the guests left and the sun dipped low, the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Gift bags and wrapping paper littered the floor. Rachel, in Ethan's body, sat beside Ethan on the couch, handing him a cup of tea. Well, she said, you survived. Barely, he groaned. Your friends are viciously cheerful. She laughed. They're sweet. You just don't understand women's social codes. He leaned back, sighing. I think I do now. Everyone means well, but they forget you're a person, not just a vessel for the baby. Rachel looked at him, surprised by the insight. Yeah, that's exactly it. He turned to her, eyes softer than she'd seen in months. I used to think you were being dramatic about it. But today, God, it's exhausting trying to stay polite when you just want to scream. She smiled sadly. Welcome to womanhood. He chuckled. If we ever get back to normal, I'm building you a soundproof nap room. Rachel's eyes glistened. You'd really do that? I'll even put your name on the door, he said. Queen Rachel's Sanctuary. She laughed, and for a moment, they simply sat in silence, connected again, for real this time. Later that night, after Rachel had gone to bed, Ethan lingered in the nursery. The room was half-finished, walls painted pale yellow, a white crib in the corner, a mobile hanging above it with little stars that glowed faintly in the dark. He rested his hands on the crib's railing, then on his belly. The baby kicked once, firm and clear. He smiled, whispering, Hey there, kiddo. I don't know what's going on, but I promise I'll do better. For you. For your mom. As if in response, the baby kicked again. Ethan felt tears slip down his cheeks, but this time, they were soft, peaceful tears. In the doorway, Emma watched silently, a proud smile on her face. Almost there, she murmured. They're almost ready. It happened on a Thursday night. The day had been calm, almost suspiciously calm. Ethan had spent most of it lounging on the couch, reading Rachel's baby books and rubbing his belly absent-mindedly, feeling oddly peaceful. Rachel had gone to work in Ethan's body, trying to keep up the facade of normalcy while quietly researching how to undo body-swapping curses on her lunch break. Outside, the Oregon sky was painted with a grayish lavender hue, clouds drifting lazily after a light rain. The world felt settled. And then it wasn't. Around 8 p.m., Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, munching on a bowl of cereal. The TV was murmuring in the background. Everything was perfectly ordinary until a sharp pain shot through his abdomen. He froze, spoon halfway to his mouth. At first, he thought it was just another cramp. He'd been getting those a lot lately. But then came another one, stronger, deeper, like something twisting inside. What the hell? He gasped, clutching his stomach. He stood up, breathing hard. The room tilted slightly. His heart began to pound. He felt another jab of pain, sharp, rhythmic, wrong. Rachel, he called out instinctively, then stopped. She wasn't Rachel. He was. Upstairs, Rachel, in Ethan's body, was on her laptop, finishing up some office work, when she heard a crash from the kitchen. She rushed downstairs, as fast as Ethan's heavier frame could move, and froze at the sight before her. Ethan was leaning against the counter, pale and trembling, one hand on his belly, the other gripping the countertop so tightly his knuckles were white. "Ethan," she cried. "What's happening?" I don't know," he panted. "It hurts. It really hurts." Rachel's heart dropped. She ran to him, trying to steady him. Okay, breathe. Tell me where." Another contraction hit him, and he cried out. "Oh God, Rachel, I think something's wrong with the baby." Her blood went cold. No. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone. "Mom, get the car ready. We're going to the hospital." Emma's voice came faint but calm from the other room. "On it." The drive to the hospital was chaos. Rain had started falling again, heavy and fast, drumming against the windshield. Ethan was in the passenger seat, breathing through clenched teeth, one hand pressed to his belly, the other clutching Rachel's sleeve. Rachel kept her voice as steady as she could. "It's okay. You're okay. Just keep breathing." He groaned. "You're telling me to breathe? You're supposed to be the calm one." "I am calm," she snapped, voice shaking. Emma, sitting in the back seat, leaned forward between them. "It's going to be fine, sweetheart. Trust me." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Trust you? You and your cosmic lessons." But then another wave of pain silenced him. He gritted his teeth, tears springing to his eyes. Rachel reached over, taking his hand. "Hey, look at me." He did, eyes wide and scared. "You're not alone," she said softly. "Not anymore. We're in this together, remember." Something in her voice anchored him. His breathing slowed, matching hers. For the first time that night, he stopped fighting the pain and started trusting her. At the hospital, chaos turned clinical. Nurses rushed him into a room, hooking up monitors, checking vitals. Rachel stayed by his side, answering questions from doctors who thought she was the husband. It took every ounce of her acting ability not to scream the truth. After what felt like forever, the doctor, a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Porter, looked up from the monitor and smiled. "Good news. The baby's fine. Just strong Braxton Hicks contractions, false labor. Completely normal at this stage." Rachel exhaled so hard her knees nearly gave out. Ethan, drenched in sweat, looked up weakly. "False labor? You mean, not real?" Dr. Porter chuckled. "Not yet. Your body's just practicing." He let his head fall back on the pillow. "Practicing? I thought I was dying." Rachel laughed shakily, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You scared me half to death, you idiot." He managed a small smile. "Guess now you know how it feels." They stayed at the hospital for a few hours under observation. The lights were dim, machines beeping softly, rain pattering against the window. Ethan was resting, but still pale, his hand resting protectively over the round curve of the belly. Rachel sat beside him, her large hands, Ethan's hands, wrapped around his. She couldn't stop watching him breathe, every rise and fall of his chest reminding her how fragile, how precious this strange life they'd built together really was. Finally, he spoke quietly. "You know, when it started, I thought, this is it. I've screwed up so badly, I'm going to lose everything." Rachel looked up. "Don't say that." He smiled weakly. "No, I mean it. I've been walking around like an idiot these past months, thinking you were just being moody or dramatic. But tonight, I felt it. That fear. The kind that eats you alive when you think something's wrong with your child." His voice cracked. "I get it now, Rach. Every ache, every sleepless night. I get it." She squeezed his hand. "Hey, that's enough guilt for one lifetime." He looked at her, eyes glossy. "You deserve better than me." Rachel smiled through her tears. "You're wrong. I just wanted you to see me." "I do now," he whispered. Emma stepped in quietly, a knowing look on her face. "The universe has funny ways of making us pay attention, doesn't it?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "You planned this, didn't you? You and your cosmic meddling." Emma chuckled softly. "Oh, honey, I just prayed for understanding. The rest was out of my hands." Rachel shook her head. Remind me never to let you light candles during a thunderstorm again. Emma grinned. Noted. Hours later, as the hospital quieted down, Rachel dozed off in the chair beside Ethan's bed. Ethan stirred, looking at her, his body, her soul, and felt something swell in his chest. Love. Gratitude. He reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. You're stronger than I'll ever be, he murmured. The monitor beside him beeped softly, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing in the room. Then, just as his eyes began to close, a strange flicker of light shimmered above them, like static in the air. Emma, sitting silently in the corner, looked up. Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Almost ready, she whispered to the universe. Almost. The house was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that carried meaning. The storm outside had passed hours ago, leaving a damp chill in the Oregon air. The fireplace crackled softly in the living room, filling the house with a golden warmth. Ethan, still in Rachel's body, sat on the couch, both hands resting gently on the roundness of her belly. The baby was moving again, little kicks fluttering under his palms like a reminder. Hey, I'm here. He'd gotten used to them by now. At first, those movements startled him, made him feel alien in his own skin. But tonight, there was something different, something grounding. Every kick, every twist felt like a heartbeat of life, a small echo of everything Rachel had been enduring. Hey there, he whispered, his voice soft. It's Dad. Or, technically Mom right now. Yeah, this is weird, kiddo. The baby shifted again. Ethan smiled faintly, his throat tightening. He leaned back, eyes glinting with the flicker of firelight. I used to think your mom complained too much, he continued, his words trembling slightly. But now I know, she's the strongest person I've ever met. He paused, feeling the weight of his confession. I didn't see it. I didn't see her. I was too busy being tired, too busy thinking my job was harder, that I was the one carrying the load. But she's been carrying both of us, me and you, all along. Ethan's eyes stung. He blinked rapidly, laughing weakly at himself. You know, I never thought I'd cry talking to a baby bump. Guess miracles come in all shapes, huh? A creak at the door made him look up. Rachel, in Ethan's body, stood at the threshold, still in his work clothes, hair tousled, face tired. She'd just come back from another long day of managing Ethan's job, and her eyes softened as she watched the sight before her, her husband, in her body, gently speaking to the child they both loved. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there for a long moment, the corners of her lips trembling, her heart swelling with something beyond words. When Ethan noticed her, he froze, embarrassed. Hey. I was just, talking to the baby. Rachel smiled. I heard. Her voice, coming from Ethan's deeper tone, sounded strangely warm. You're good at it. Ethan chuckled. Maybe. Guess I should have started earlier. Rachel walked closer and sat down beside him, her movement slow, thoughtful. The firelight painted her face in shades of gold and amber. For the first time since the swap, there was no awkwardness between them. Just quiet understanding. She said softly, when this all started, I thought the universe was punishing us. Like some cruel joke. Ethan nodded. Yeah, me too. I was angry at first. I thought this was just some magic nonsense. She turned to him. And now? He looked down at the belly again, his expression tender. Now I think it's a lesson. One we both needed. A long silence followed, not empty, but full. Full of things unsaid but understood. Rachel finally exhaled. I saw what you deal with at work. Your boss is a nightmare. Ethan snorted. Tell me about it. I had no idea you wake up every 2 hours to pee. That made her laugh, a genuine sound that filled the room. Yeah, it's not exactly glamorous, is it? Nope, he said, smiling. Then his face softened again. But you've been doing it. Every single day. Without complaining half as much as I would have. Rachel's eyes shimmered. I was scared, Ethan. All the time. I didn't know if I was doing things right for the baby, for you, for us. I felt so, alone. He reached out and took her hand, or rather, his own hand, in her borrowed body. The gesture was strange, but deeply human. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "Not anymore. I get it now. I really do." For a while, they just sat there, husband and wife, trapped in each other's bodies, yet finally seeing each other more clearly than ever before. Then, without warning, the firelight flared. A low rumble rolled across the sky. A bright flash, not of lightning this time, but something softer, like starlight blooming inside the room, filled their vision. Rachel gasped. Ethan felt a jolt, not painful, but electric. The air shimmered, thick with warmth and light. For a heartbeat, everything went still, no sound, no breath, just pure silence. Then, Ethan blinked. The world snapped back into focus. He looked down and realized. The bump was gone. His hands were his own again. The texture of his skin, the shape of his arms familiar, real. Across from him, Rachel, back in her own body, blinked rapidly, her palms flying to her belly. She gasped when she felt the baby kick again from inside her. Tears immediately welled in her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered. He didn't wait. He leaned forward, gathering her into his arms, holding her as tightly as he could without hurting her. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed, not from fear, not from pain, but from relief. He kissed the top of her head. "I'm here," he murmured. "I'm here, Rach. I promise I'll never take you for granted again." Her hands trembled as they clung to him. "You really felt it, didn't you?" Ethan nodded, eyes wet. "Every kick. Every ache. Every little fear. I'll never forget it." For a long moment, they stayed that way, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle rhythm of new understanding. Outside, the night sky cleared completely, revealing a scatter of stars above the small Oregon town. And though neither of them could explain how or why the magic had happened, they both knew this. Something inside them had changed forever. As they pulled apart slightly, Rachel smiled through her tears. "You know, Mom, Emma always said the universe listens to our words." Ethan chuckled softly. "Guess next time I'll be more careful what I wish for." They laughed together this time, and for once, it wasn't forced. In that laughter, something healed. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the storm. The world outside their little Oregon town had returned to its ordinary rhythm: cloudy mornings, coffee brewing in the kitchen, the distant hum of school buses. But inside the Miller household, nothing felt quite the same anymore. Ethan moved differently now. He noticed things. He noticed the way Rachel's hand instinctively rested on her belly when she was lost in thought. He noticed how she paused at the top of the stairs to catch her breath, and how her smile softened every time the baby kicked. And every time he saw it, he felt a swell of awe and guilt and gratitude, all tangled together. "Don't hover," Rachel teased one morning as she packed her bag for a doctor's appointment. "You're like a golden retriever following me around." Ethan grinned sheepishly from the kitchen. "Hey, golden retrievers are loyal. Besides, I'm making sure you eat before you go." She glanced at the plate he'd set out for her: scrambled eggs, toast, and a sliced banana arranged into a wobbly, smiley face. "You're ridiculous," she said, but her voice carried warmth. "Ridiculously thoughtful," he corrected, placing a glass of orange juice beside her. Rachel shook her head, but couldn't stop the small laugh that escaped her lips. "I'll admit, I'm kind of enjoying this new Ethan." "Yeah, he's a limited edition," he said, leaning against the counter. "Only available after one near-death lightning incident and a full-body pregnancy experience." They both burst out laughing. The sound felt good, light, familiar, full of something they hadn't shared in months: ease. At the clinic later that morning, Ethan insisted on coming along, carrying Rachel's bag even when she told him not to. The waiting room smelled faintly of antiseptic and baby powder, the air filled with the soft murmur of other expectant parents. Rachel signed in while Ethan fidgeted, glancing around nervously. "So, this is where I came that day," he said under his breath. She raised an eyebrow. "When you were me?" "Yeah," he shuddered. "Nurse Becky still gives me flashbacks." Rachel laughed so hard she had to hold her belly. "Oh my God. What did you even say to her?" "I think I told her I was fine, and then fainted at the sound of the word cervix." Rachel covered her mouth to stifle another laugh, But the nurse at the counter, the very same nurse Becky, recognized them and smiled. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller. So good to see you again." Ethan froze. Rachel smirked. "Hi, Becky. Don't mind him. He's still a little traumatized." The nurse chuckled. "I'd say most husbands are, dear." They followed her into the exam room, and as the ultrasound screen flickered to life, Ethan felt that same awe wash over him all over again. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, steady and strong. Rachel squeezed his hand. "Still surreal, isn't it?" He nodded, eyes locked on the tiny figure moving on the screen. "It's like hearing proof that love has a sound." Rachel turned to him, her eyes glistening. "That's actually beautiful." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, I'm full of poetic one-liners now. Comes with the whole body swap enlightenment package." The doctor smiled, printing out the scan. "Everything looks great. Just keep taking it easy, Rachel. Not long now." As they left the clinic, Ethan tucked the printout into his wallet like it was the most precious thing he'd ever owned. That weekend, they invited Emma, Ethan's mother, over for dinner. The smell of roast chicken filled the air, and the table gleamed under the soft light of their little dining room. Emma had that knowing look again, the same one she'd worn the morning after the lightning storm. She watched her son fuss over Rachel's chair, pouring her water, adjusting the pillow behind her back. Finally, she couldn't help but tease. My, what happened to my clumsy boy? Did the storm knock some sense into you?" Ethan grinned. "Something like that." Rachel shot him a playful look. "You have no idea." Emma chuckled. "You know, Ethan, I used to pray that one day you'd understand what it means to carry someone's world inside you, to really carry love, not just talk about it." She smiled, eyes twinkling. "Seems the universe got creative with that lesson." Ethan reached over and squeezed Rachel's hand. "Yeah, it did." The room fell into a warm silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need to be filled. As the weeks rolled by, Ethan and Rachel found their rhythm again. They argued sometimes about baby names, about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Ethan insisted it did. But there was laughter now, where before there had been distance. One evening, Ethan came home from work with paint smudges on his jeans and a mischievous grin. "What are you up to?" Rachel asked suspiciously. "Come see." He led her down the hallway to what used to be their guest room. When she stepped inside, she gasped. The walls were freshly painted a soft sky blue, with tiny white clouds hand-drawn in corners. In the middle stood a crib, still half-assembled, and on the wall above it, painted in uneven but heartfelt letters, were the words, "Welcome home, little one." Rachel's eyes filled instantly. "Ethan, it's beautiful." He rubbed the back of his neck, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, I figured it was about time I actually did something instead of just talking." She stepped closer, running her hand over the painted letters. "You did this yourself?" Every crooked brushstroke. Rachel turned and threw her arms around him, careful of her belly. "You have no idea how much this means to me." He smiled into her hair. "Oh, I think I do." A few nights later, they sat together on the porch swing. The summer air was thick with the smell of rain and honeysuckle. Fireflies blinked lazily across the lawn. Rachel leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about it?" "The swap." "All the time," he admitted. "Sometimes I still dream about it. Waking up and feeling that weight, the baby moving." It was terrifying and amazing at the same time. She smiled softly. "I think we both needed it." "Yeah," he said. "You learned what my stress felt like. I learned what strength really looks like." They sat in silence for a while, watching the night sky stretch endlessly above them. Ethan took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think love was about big gestures. Trips, gifts, fancy dinners." "And now?" she asked. "Now I think it's about showing up. About knowing when to hold your partner's hair when she's throwing up, or when to just listen." Rachel laughed softly. "That's a very specific example." He grinned. "Well, I had first-hand experience." They both laughed again, and somewhere between that laughter and the hum of crickets, the last of their old distance dissolved completely. A month later, their baby was born, a healthy little girl named Emma Grace, after the woman who'd always believed in the magic of understanding. As Ethan held his daughter for the first time, tears blurred his vision. The tiny weight in his arms was both fragile and infinite. Rachel, exhausted but glowing, watched him. "Well, Dad," she whispered, "how does it feel to finally hold her?" He smiled, his voice breaking. "Like holding the whole universe." Rachel reached for his hand, their fingers brushing over the baby's blanket. Ethan leaned close, pressing a kiss to Rachel's forehead. "You did amazing, Rach. You're incredible." She smiled sleepily. "We did amazing." Outside the hospital window, dawn broke over Oregon, a soft, golden light spilling across the town. And as the Millers watched the first sunrise of their new life together, Ethan whispered the words he'd promised himself never to forget. "Thank you for carrying us." Rachel smiled, her eyes closing in peace. "Always." The end. Sparkles, sometimes the greatest gift the universe gives us isn't magic that changes our bodies, it's the understanding that changes our hearts.